Hey everybody, I'm coming to you straight from the laundry room. Yes, you gotta go in the house wherever there's quiet, and right now it happens to be in the laundry room. So I hope you don't mind learning from the laundry room. Here we go. So to start off with, and you can write this down in your notebooks, I wanted to intro percents as ratios with a denominator of 100. So if you want to start thinking about 53% really means 53 per cent. You know, cents in a dollar, how many are there? Well, there's 100. Cent, century, how many years are there in a century? Well, there's 100. Cent means 100. So per cent means per 100, right? So if you turn 53 into a ratio that looks like a fraction, you're talking about 53 over 100. Same thing with 21. 21 per cent means 21 per 100. So that would be 21 over 100. It's just a ratio with a denominator of 100. Woohoo! We love ratios! So that actually kind of gives us a good intro into percents as fractions, right? I'm going to do percents as fractions first, and then we'll go back and turn them into decimals. So percents as fractions, 77% as a fraction is just 77 over 100, because it's a ratio with a denominator of 100. 77 over 100, and then you simplify. That cannot be simplified because they don't have any common factors. So we're going to leave that one as is. What about 16 over 100? 16% is 16 over 100. That can be simplified. They're both divisible by 4. 16 divided by 4 is 4. 100 divided by 4 is 25. So that is the simplest version of that fraction. So 16% as a fraction would be 4/25. What about decimals? Decimals, it's actually really easy if you think about percents as hundredths, right? 77 hundredths is this fraction right here. 77% is 77 hundredths. You know how to write that. We just did that yesterday. So 77 hundredths. Easy. 16%, you can go back to your hundredths number. 16% is 16 hundredths. So here we go. 16 hundredths. Now notice, and some of you may have learned this before when you learned about percents and fractions and decimals. If you, right now your decimal point is here, right? It's not written, but it's understood, 77 decimal, right? And you just move it 2 spaces to the left. There it is. And again, here would be your decimal, move it 2 spaces to the left, and you get your decimal form. You just take away the percent sign. Don't move your decimal and forget to take away your percent sign. That would be bad. Okay, here we go. Keep going. All right, but how do we turn fractions into percents? Well, just like it was, we turned a percent into a fraction over 100 and then simplified it. Now we need to go from our simplified fraction to a fraction over 100 and then turn it into a percent. So how do you get, let's go to 4/5. How do you get 4/5 to be a fraction over 100? Well, we multiplied the 5 by 20, right? So we got to multiply the 4 by 20 and we get 80. So 80 hundredths would be what as a percent? Well, 80 per 100 is 80%. Perfect. Okay, now what about 7/8? For 7/8, we're actually going to have to use some decimals here. There are a couple different ways you can go about it, but I think the decimal way is the simplest. So how do you get from 8 to 100? Well, you multiply by 12.5. So you're going to do the same thing up here. Times 12.5. 7 times 12.5 is, hold on, let me do some mental math, 84 plus 3.5, so 87.5. Okay, so now we have 87.5, or 87 and 5/10, 87 and a half hundredths. So that would be 87.5%, right? 87.5 per 100, so 87.5%. That's what the cent means, again, is 100. Now, some of you might be wondering, how did I know that to get from 8 to 100, I needed to multiply by 12.5? Well, if you have that question, feel free to divide 100. You might need some zeros behind the decimal point. 100 divided by whatever number you're using right here. Okay, so 8 goes into 10 one time. Subtract 2, bring down your 0. There's a 2. I got a 16. Sorry, I'm trying to avoid some of my control panel here at the bottom. So 20 minus 16 is 4. Bring down the 0. 0.5. Okay, and you can do that long division however you want to do it. If you have your own method, that's fine. You don't have to use the method I used, but that's how you would get your multiplier number. Okay, all right, let's move on to 13 250ths. And again, well, what would you have to do? I think this one would be easiest to take it to 1,000 first and then divide by 10 to get it to 100ths. So here we go. Let's times by 4 to get it to thousandths. So times by 4 would get it to a fraction over 1,000, and 13 times 4 is 52. So now if we want to divide this by 10, the top and the bottom by 10, we would 52 divided by 10 gives you 5 2/10. 1,000 divided by 10 gives you 100. So 5 2/10 per 100 is 5 2/10%. Okay? Last slide, decimals to percents. This is so easy. All we got to do is move the decimal point, right? So we said in a previous slide that when you have a percent, like 77%, do you remember that? We move the decimal point 2 to the left, and we get 77 hundredths, right? So if we do the same thing here with 4/10, let's say we move our decimal point 2 to the right. Remember, we have to do it opposite because we're changing it from a decimal to a percent instead of a percent to a decimal. We get 40%, because as you know, when you skip over this decimal place right here, it still exists. We just need a placeholder number, so we would need a 0 right there. Okay, so 4/10 would be 40%, because it would be like 40 hundredths. 40 per 100, 40%. Okay, next one. Move the decimal place over to 57%. Okay, that's 57 hundredths, 57 per 100, 57%. Last one, move the decimal point over to, now this one we're actually going to have a decimal within the percent, and that's okay, 84 3/10%. Okay, so don't forget to do your question or tidbit and bring your notes to class tomorrow. Okay, see you tomorrow.